welcome to the Cheap Air Gunner channel. I'm Cherokee Steve. I wanted to finally get to testing those pellets that I had ordered recently that I have never had before and have only seen, read, and heard great things about. And that's the JSB Hades pellets in 22 caliber. They have the patterned head on them, kind of like a hazardous product symbol. Really made, from my understanding, for really good deformation. We're going to test that out. I'm going to put these up against some other pellets, but this is the first time shooting these for me. Had a hard time finding them in stock anywhere, so once I did find them, I made sure that I ordered some. So, I'm looking forward to testing these. We're going to do a penetration test and deformation test. We'll also be recording some velocities that I can get from all of the pellets. I'll be using the KTHPA, the 2400 KTHPA. I'll be topping off to keep everything equal. Before I take my shot with each of the pellets, I'll make sure that the gun is filled to 15 MPa. And then we'll see how many pages they penetrate into the catalog I'm using. And hopefully I could pull each one out and we'll get a look at how much each of them deformed. As far as the pellets I'm going to be using, check this out. Again, the pellets that will be tested: the Hades, the Barracuda Hunter Extreme, the Terminators, and the Crosman Premier Hollow Points. The Hades, as you can see, check in at 15.89 grain, just under 16. The Barracuda Hunter Extreme checks in at 19.09 grain. The Terminators at 16.36. So I thought that was another decent comparison weight-wise. These are similar. And then the standard pellet to compare the other ones against, I would choose the Crosman Premier Hollow Point at 14.3 grain. So this is the catalog I'm going to be shooting into with the 4 different pellets. I will be testing penetration and deformation for the Hades. The most similar pellet I could think of that I have to the Hades, which is the Barracuda Hunter Extreme. Another pellet I thought that would offer good penetration with good deformation is the H&N Terminator, which I'll be shooting down here. And then, kind of as a standard pellet that a lot of people shoot just to compare the other 3 against, would be the Crosman Premier Hollow Points down here. So, first up, in the shooting sequence, I will be using the JSB Hades pellets. Once again, they check in at 15.89 grain. .89 grain on a full 15 MPa fill. Gets me 830 feet per second. Next up in the shooting sequence is going to be the Barracuda Hunter Extremes by H&N. It's a much heavier pellet. It's at 19.09 grain, but I thought that the shape of the head and the indentations that they put were very similar to the Hades, and I'm assuming are there for deformation. So that's one of the things I really am interested in checking out, how much the Hades deform compared to the Barracuda Hunter Extremes. Full fill 15 MPa Barracuda Hunter Extremes. Barracuda Hunter Extremes and a full fill, 790 feet per second. Barracuda Hunter Extremes, 19.09 grain, 790 feet per second. Next up are the H&N Terminators. I chose these because I thought they were a good balance between penetration and deformation. They have the very slight protruding metal tip, pointed end, but the vast majority of the head is much like a hollow point pellet. So that's what we're going to try next. These check in at 16.36 grain. On a full fill, the Terminators have gotten me 822 feet per second. 822 feet per second. Last but not least, what I figured I'd use as kind of a standard, which so many people use for many different types of shooting, are the Crosman Premier Hollow Points, 14.3 grain. And being the lightest pellet, not surprisingly, these give me the highest velocity, 846 feet per second. Let's dig out the pellets and check penetration and deformation. So as far as the Hades pellets go, the penetration wise, as far as this particular catalog, it penetrated 224 pages, which, doing a quick look at the 4 sections in the book with the 4 different types of pellets, was one of the least amounts of pages penetrated. But as far as deformation goes, This is very similar to the larger caliber pellets that I've tested for penetration, the big bore ones. As far as this triangulated shape, it's split off into 3 separate sections and penetrated 224 pages. That's kind of what I expected as far as not getting the best penetration out of all of these pellets that I've tested, but getting really good deformation. That's what I have really read and heard about the Hades pellets, that their devastation is right up there with any pellet you could put it up against. The next pellet I wanted to check penetration wise and deformation was the Barracuda Hunter Extreme. So the Barracuda Hunter Extremes penetrated 469 pages. This was by far the farthest penetrating pellet out of the 4 I tested. As far as deformation, I'm pretty impressed. It flattened out pretty good, gave extremely good penetration and deformation. I would rate it as second as far as deformation to the Hades, but it penetrated much further as well. The next pellet we're going to check out is the Terminator. The Terminators were the 3rd farthest penetrating pellet. 269 pages. I thought it might penetrate a little bit farther than it actually did. I'm a little bit surprised by the amount of penetration or lack thereof. Deformation was pretty good. The head of the pellet really folded over. So pretty decent deformation. 3rd best penetration. And last but not least are the Crosman Premier hollow points. These penetrated the least. The Crosman Premier hollow points, penetration-wise. The Crosman Premier hollow points penetrated the least. It only penetrated 218 pages, but I was really impressed with the deformation. It really gave a good mushrooming effect. And really deformed really well. I was very pleasantly surprised with the Crosman's deformation. To summarize everything, the Hades pretty much live up to what they're supposed to do. They deformed better than any of the 4 pellets that were tested. It penetrated pretty well. The second most deformed pellet was the Barracuda Hunter Extremes. But they also penetrated the farthest. It's the heaviest of the 4 pellets, so it's going to give, with the high pressure air behind it, it's going to give a pretty good smack, which is obviously going to help with the penetration. As far as deformation, I would place it second to the Hades, but first in penetration. Then, third in penetration would be the H&N Terminator, which gave some pretty good deformation and compression, but certainly not as good as any of the other 3 pellets, including the Crosman Premiers, which penetrated the least, but gave really good deformation. I was really surprised by that. I would put that deformation-wise in 3rd place, but extremely close to the Barracuda Hunter Extremes. So, to summarize everything, I certainly would not hesitate to use the Hades in a hunting situation. They are certainly, as far as deforming on impact, a devastating pellet. My go-to first pellet I would reach for and want to do my hunting with are the Barracuda Hunter Extremes. Hades would be a very close second. And it's kind of a toss-up between the Crosman Premier Hollow Points and the H&N Terminators. I'm sure if you looked up the cost of those 2 pellets, it's much more cost effective with the Crosman Premier Hollow Points, if that's a determining factor on which pellet you want to use. But that's going to conclude this video as far as testing out the Hades, testing it against some pellets that I thought might give similar performance, and a standard which I would consider to be the Crosman Premier Hollow Points. So, hope this video was informative in some way, might help you choose what you want to test and possibly use in a hunting situation. If you're out hunting some small game with a .22 caliber air gun, all 4 are a great choice. But once again, personally, in my usage, Barracuda Hunter Extremes would be first. Hades, second. Toss-up between the H&N Terminators and the Crosman Premier Hollow Points. So, until the next video, guys, thanks for checking this one out. But, until the next one, stay safe and shoot safe.